What if you could find work that was meaningful, but didn't come with a standard toxic corporate workplace culture? At Palm Tree, we think we have exactly that, and our colleagues would agree. We're a consulting firm focused on the world of private equity and M&A. We do good work, and we're proud of that. But we also invest heavily into building a people-first culture. The investment in our people has resulted in high retention numbers across the firm since we started in 2010. If accounting, strategy, analytics, banking, and working with the world's smartest and kindest people sounds like the kind of work you'd enjoy, consider applying for a role at Palm Tree. Visit our careers page at palmtreellc.com or find the link in this episode's show notes for more information.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. Japheth here, excited for today's episode on navigating U.S. recruiting as an international. So this episode is going to be more specifically for folks who do not live in the United States and who are looking to break into consulting in the United States, whether in 6 months or in 6 years. So this is going to give you a really good roadmap for how you can enable this transition. So specifically, we're going to cover the 5 rules of recruiting for the U.S. We're going to share networking, resume, and case interview prep tips. We'll be sharing creative pathways to break in, as well as some tools for success. We're here for you as you navigate consulting recruiting, so please reach out if you have any questions or if you need some help on your journey. You can always reach our team by email, team@managementconsulted.com. That's TEAM@managementconsulted.com. We look forward to hearing from you. All right, without further ado, let's get into this episode.
We're really excited that you're here. And today our goal is to resource you with how to effectively navigate recruiting, not just how to apply for jobs. Honestly, that would take us 5 minutes, right? You open up the application, you submit your resume, but how to navigate it, how to do it in a way where you're using and leveraging insights and resources and an insider mentality from the firm so that you can successfully recruit. That's a really big difference and one that we really want to hone in on today. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is just a very clear 5-part roadmap to consulting for internationals. We want to just acknowledge right up front that our focus for everything that we do is on consulting. We're really good at consulting. That has very rapidly expanded into also corporate strategy roles. And so you're going to hear me mention consulting today. If you're not interested only in consulting, great. But we would love to help you also get into adjacent type of roles like these corporate strategy roles. The real focus for today is how to break in the US. Although I think that if you're trying to go to the UK or to Canada or just somewhere that is not your home country, there are a lot of learnings that are here. But the majority of the questions that we get are either I'm a student in the US, want to stay in the US, or I would like to come to the US to work. And so that's going to be the lens of our focus for today. The second thing that we're going to talk about are networking, application, and interview tips. These are direct answers to questions that we get to help people unhook themselves from getting stuck in the international recruiting process. And so these are not like generic, here's how you network. This is if you're an international and nobody will listen to you, this is how you network kinds of insights. The third thing that we're going to talk about are tools, programs, databases, et cetera, to help international students. And if you don't find something that's here, I just want to let you know we are constantly building at Management Consulted. So if there's something that you don't see, ask us for it. Ask us in the chat, private message Eden or Caleb, and we will build this. That's how our H-1B sponsors database came about. It's a specific to consulting H-1B sponsors database. And we are really happy to continue to do that kind of stuff for you. And then at the end, we will take questions. So if you've got questions, you can feel free to pop them in the chat at any time. Eden is going to be moderating our questions later on in the session. And so if you want to just ask, send her a question directly or type it in the chat, she'll hold those. And at the end, we'll take questions. So we're going to get started by kicking off with the 5 rules of U.S. recruiting. And I just think that this is one of the most important things, because if you do not know the game you're playing and the rules of the game, it's really hard to win at the game. And I just want to acknowledge I am a U.S. student who found it very, very challenging still to recruit in the United States. So we acknowledge that this is not easy for internationals, but today we're going to make it just a little bit easier. So here are the 5 key questions that internationals need to effectively answer before you go and talk to firms. Many times our number one problem that we see with internationals is that they come in and they say, I'll take whatever I can get. Okay, and that's the number one way to be uncompetitive in a competitive US market. What you have to do is to position yourself in a place where you're strong, where you're outside of the main pool, and where you have a clear sense of purpose, where you are demonstrating that you have a place that you would like to go in order to open up active conversations inside the firms. It doesn't mean that you have blinders on. It doesn't mean that you say, I will only work in the New York office and only in this function. No, it doesn't mean that. It means my first choice is the New York office and my first choice is this function. And then you go to a firm and you say that and you present that as your kind of your option set that you would like to consider, and you ask them for feedback on it. So we're going to talk today on how to get to that point, to the place where you position yourself with a primary option set of interest when you're walking into the firms. And it includes the answers to these 5 questions: which function, which firms, which locations, when you should be approaching the firms, and also how specifically to approach the firms. First, I'm going to talk about function. I mean, I just had a call earlier this week through our Super Prep program. People get 1 hour of time with me directly. It's the only time that I work with folks one-on-one, and I loved it. I just pulled up on my computer some different job sites, and she was an international student, and we were navigating this exact question. And my first question was, what are you already good at? Because a lot of where she started was, where do I want to go? Love the question, wrong place to start. Because you have to start with, where am I already good? Where is a firm likely to look at me and say, you are not only worthy of hiring, but actually potentially a differential hirer. You're someone who brings something to the table that we're really specifically looking for. And so we often find that our international students bring one of 3 core areas in terms of function. And the first place that you should start is with your core capabilities. And this is basically saying that you're taking the smallest baby step from what you have done before or the program that you're in into the next role. So for example, if you worked in tech, if you are a programmer, a coder, if you worked in engineering, if you worked in healthcare, if you worked in a heavily supply chain oriented role, the clearer and closer you are to your core capabilities, the easier it is for a firm to say, yes, I would love to sponsor you. The whole history of sponsorship, by the way, in the US was basically set up after we started to kind of limit immigration, and we weren't just, you can come to Ellis Island and do anything. It was to limit our immigration process so that it was focused on people who we could not hire inside the United States. So this core capabilities really speaks to the mindset of many firms, which is we should hire internationals if they bring something our locals can't. So core capabilities is the first piece of this structure and the first place where you need to start. What are you already good at? Doesn't mean that you're going to include only core capabilities. It just means that that's an important part of the first part of the process. The second one is what I would call adjacent capabilities. It's where you say, look, I'm good at Python, but the adjacent capability is a role that asks you to be heavily analytical, maybe not in Python, but in other programs that you could learn because you've demonstrated that you're good in Python. Key programming languages, heavily analytical. Adjacent capabilities takes one step away from the core capabilities toward a more general suite of information and knowledge base. So that adjacent capabilities is the second place that you'd want to go. And the third are aspirational roles. And what we often find is that aspirational roles are very, very possible for you to get as an international student. But if you're only applying for aspirational roles, you get rejection after rejection. No one understands what the leap is that you're trying to make, and it doesn't make sense in your overall story. So you say, I was an engineer and I spent 11 hours a day working in this program, and now I would like to make PowerPoint for a living, right? And people they're just jarred. They're confused. Why do you want to do from here to here? So the aspirational roles can make sense, often need a bridge, like an educational bridge, a new degree, et cetera. But if you're like, hey, look, I would rather move from my very specific focus area to general strategy, heavily analytical to heavy presentations, or more junior roles where I was kind of stuck in the bottom of an organization directly to senior exposure, it's not impossible, but you're going to have to explain what you've done in between or what you've done as an extra role outside of your current role to move there. So our first job here is to say, look, you don't have to limit yourself to it, but focused first on opening up opportunities that leverage your core capabilities. Okay, that's the function that would make sense. And a lot of you are doing an educational program or want to come to the US to switch out of it. I just want to say you will get a chance to, I can promise you, that every person on our team represents somebody who's made a pivot, really significant pivot. Everybody who goes through the consulting roles that we have, consulting itself is a pivot point for you. But starting with core capabilities will open up the most options, and options give you leverage as we move to the other 4 steps. The second question is, which firms make the most sense? And so I've separated out here the firms that sponsor. That's kind of the missing piece that we would love to know about. But I want to talk about the other 3 characteristics of firms that often candidates who are internationals, who feel like they have to beg and plead for a job, don't come in acknowledging and presenting themselves as powerful, desirable candidates to the firm, which you are. Okay, which you are. They would not sponsor if you were not powerful and desirable. They do not think of you as a second-class hire. They think of you actually sometimes as above their US hires, that they are willing to do more, go to more effort, spend more money, spend more time sponsoring you, and take more risk on because of what you bring to the table. So it's up to you to investigate these other 3 things. The first one is culture. If you've come from a country or a culture that was incredibly hierarchical, very structured, they would want to know why you want to move into a role that's not, or they would like to know that you thrive in structure. They would like to understand the culture that you've come from and the culture that you're looking for and the story behind that. Second, if it's been a very flat culture, if you were in an entrepreneurial environment where you could talk to the CEO by popping into his or her office, amazing. If you're moving into a culture that's flat from a structured culture, they'll need to understand a bridge between the 2 of those. Are you looking for a supportive culture, a culture that has other international students, maybe even a support group for international students? It's supportive of also potentially some of the DEI hiring initiatives that different firms have. So culture is a really important piece that I think you'll see will come up more in your conversations with people than you expect. They're not just asking, why do you want to work in the US and how can we help you get there? They're asking, why do you want to work here? And they're assuming all the choices that you have inside the US are open to you. So why there? Why Cognizant? Why Accenture? Why McKinsey? Why American Express, right? What is it about our culture? And we often find that international students come in at a disadvantage because American students will have this assertion around culture where they're saying, this is the culture that I'm looking for. I would love to ask you a few questions about how you demonstrate your core values in your culture. The second are opportunities. These are really great conversation starters. When you're meeting with somebody inside the organization, ask them in great detail what their training program is like. Are they just like, here's a computer, let's go? Or do they have a weekly training? Do they have a 2-week onboarding training and then successive annual trainings? Do they have outsourced trainings? Do they have digital trainings? Like, what are the training offerings and the training program that you are looking for, and how does that match up with the organization? What is the timeline to promotion? I always love it when people are ambitious to say, I'd love to come here and work here, but I don't want to stay in my role. So what does 2 years and 5 years ahead look like for me? And then if I am able to demonstrate that, then the match between that ambitious person and me is a great fit. Also, rotational opportunities. Do you have the chance to potentially move off of certain projects onto others? How long is the project duration? Can you move between industries? Can you move between functions? Can you move between geographies, right? Those rotational opportunities can tell you a lot about what a firm values. And again, asking about those will help you make what is for internationals often a longer term hiring decision than for traditional American students. And then third is travel. Find out whether you're going to move around. A lot of international cultures do not travel as much as US work culture. So traveling weekly, try to understand, what would that look like? Tell me what we do when we're at the client site. How does that differ from what we're inside the office doing? And then also secondments. If I wanted to work in Paris for a year in the Paris office, has anyone done that? Is that possible? What do you think of in terms of career development for things like secondments? And then fourth and finally is sponsorship. But what a lot of our international students do is that they're like, I'm not going to waste my time and yours if you're not going to sponsor me. What happens is that you miss out on the opportunity to build a relationship with a firm that is actually open to sponsoring, but maybe in many cases doesn't traditionally sponsor. So we're going to recommend that you investigate whether they've sponsored using our database, or maybe ask them at some later point in the conversation about sponsorship, but not to have that be your leading question. The first and most important question is, for now or for later, is this firm a great fit for me and why? The last thing that I want to say on here, I didn't put this on the slides, not the focus of this conversation, but we found this to be very effective when we bring firms into our community, which we do once a month. Firms that want to hire you come to the community and present. When we bring them in, we use a question format called PSP questions: personal, specific, and positive questions. So when you're asking these types of questions of a firm to get a sense of who they are, it is essential. It is not optional. It is essential that the questions that you ask are not negative, are not generic, and are not super open-ended, right? So they have to be about the person's specific experience. They're not a spokesperson for the firm, about the person's specific timeline or project that you want to ask about. And also about a happy story, not about a time when like, hey, tell me about somebody you fired and why you fired them, right? So a lot of you come in to these kinds of questions, peppering people kind of like a reporter would, and it sets the wrong tone. So it's really important that those questions in a US hiring culture that you're asking about culture, opportunities, and travel are what we call those PSP questions. So that's number two. After you figure out the core capabilities that you're going to leverage, talking to firms and figuring out how they make the most sense. And I'm going to talk in a little bit about how to do that. So I won't leave you in the dark on that.
Hey, Strategy Simplified. It's Japheth here, your producer, and I really quickly wanted to pop in to tell you about Black Belt. So if you're targeting a consulting role at a firm like McKinsey, Bain, BCG, Deloitte, Oliver Wyman, Accenture, you name it, Black Belt is a structured case prep program that might be exactly what you need to push you over the hump and land that offer. So it is a structured case coaching program where you'll get one-on-one coaching from a former McKinsey, Bain, or BCG consultant. You'll also get a year of free access to our new community for exclusive employer info sessions, training, master classes, community support, and much more. Last but not least, you get unlimited digital materials to support your case prep progress. Oh, and by the way, over 80% of Black Belts who complete the program land a consulting role. That's pretty incredible. So we'd love to see you inside of Black Belt. Join at the link in the show notes. We'll be right back after this quick break.
Have you ever heard a new digital trend and thought to yourself, okay, does this really matter? Asking the right questions helps you cut through the noise and get down to what matters most. I'm Jim Hertzfeld, host of the What If, So What podcast, where we discover what's possible with digital and figure out how to make it real by asking what if, so what, and most importantly, now what? Subscribe and listen, and together we can turn big ideas into tangible actions so you can get shit done.
Hey, it's Ian with Management Consulted, your favorite go-to gal for anything and everything MC. I'm so excited to share with you today something really special. I don't know if you know this, but I provide 15-minute meetings for candidates who are looking for recruitment support. I can help you strategize and plan out how you're going to navigate through your recruitment season and exactly how MC can help you. In that meeting, we can review your resume and I can provide you some industry insights tailored to your specific background. And maybe, just maybe, I can sprinkle just a little bit of hope in there as well. I'd be excited to connect with you when you're ready to explore personalized coaching support, so feel free to book a meeting with me through the link in the show notes today.
Number three, you need to walk in the door saying, here's where I'm planning to apply, not where should I apply. And I made this mistake when I was applying to McKinsey. I had a friend that worked at McKinsey and she was like, where do you want to work? I was like, where do you want me to work? She was like, wrong answer, right? Because that felt like I was a weak candidate just begging for scraps, table scraps. I'm not. I'm a great candidate. I'm absolutely amazing. And so instead of that, I needed to say, hey, here's my first choice. What she did After developing the first choice option, was she said, hey, here are a couple of other options that you might want to consider. So there are really 4 choices that you have when you're thinking about your application and where you're open to applying. The first is your home country. Right? I'm eligible to work there. I might have the opportunity to transfer out of there. Transferring between the Middle East and the US, the Middle East and Europe, Canada and the US are very easy to do. Asia to the US, much more challenging, super different work cultures. And so understanding both your home country and also one of the questions from the previous slide, which was secondments, international work experience. That's a really good first question. But if you want to return to your home country and you want to have those conversations, you should open up those doors. They're going to be the easiest for you for sure. The second is the closest regional city to you. If you're studying in the Midwest and the closest regional city to you is Chicago, they're going to know your school. They're going to know that you've hopefully visited Chicago. And if you haven't, you should go up for a day and just experience the city, find something to love about it. But the closest regional city will always make the most sense. And you will probably have the most alum from your school or experienced hires that have come from outside of their program that have understood who you are and where you want to go. So if you're in, Texas, right, looking at a Dallas or an Austin office or a Houston office, if you are in California, looking at an LA or a San Francisco office, really starting with that closest regional city is going to give you the most opportunities, the most to talk about. It makes the most sense from your profile. The second are looking at what I would call non-competitive cities: New York, Chicago, San Francisco, competitive cities. Atlanta, Miami, Austin, not competitive cities. Doesn't mean that it's easier to get in there. It just means that they don't have a deluge of applications and also of networking that's happening inside the office. So many of the offices hire fewer people, but those non-competitive cities present a real significant opportunity for you to get your foot in the door at a super high caliber firm in a place where they are ambitiously hiring and therefore really excited to talk to someone who is of your caliber. And then finally, competitive cities, right? So you can, of course, if you want to live in New York, you have a partner that lives in New York, like go to New York and just tell them, this is the choice that I want to make. Just recognize that by closing the door to other opportunities, you might be leaving a get in the door opportunity on the table from another place. So that's question number 3. Question number 1, again, was which function makes sense. Question number 2 was which firms make the most sense. And question number 3 is where should you open-ended look to apply. And every single one of these questions, it is your job to answer before you send an email to a firm, before you begin to investigate a firm. It is, again, not to etch it in stone. It's not like I will only go to New York, I will only work in this function, et cetera. It's just like, look, primarily, this is what I'm planning to do. And this 4th question is the final one that you need to answer before we talk about how to connect. And that's when you're planning to connect. You need to walk into any interaction with a firm telling them when you are planning to apply, not asking them when you should apply. And so it's important for you to know what their standard hiring cycles are. So I'm super glad that we asked the poll at the beginning of today, because we have May, June, July, August, and September on here. But I put at the bottom here that for MBAs only, which includes PhDs, JDs, and MDs, the full-time deadlines and interviews for MBA programs are offset here to begin September, October for full-time, and then the internship deadlines are in November with interviews in January. So I put that as an asterisk on there, but we had almost 50% of people that are in that category. So I just wanted you to know this. This up here is the traditional hiring time for undergrads as well as experienced hires. So MBAs are in their special little category. MBAs always know that we're special, right? When I was at Columbia, I knew that I was a special someone. But here what we've got are May, June, July, August, September. This is the kind of now traditional, the current traditional hiring cycle for consulting firms. And what this means is that basically today is it is ground zero. It is the day number 0 that you have to get started with your applications, because the firms, what they do at the beginning of recruiting season, which is when they say, here's when we're going to open deadlines, is they sit down and they say, this is how many people we're hiring in the next 12 months. Now, they may change that by rescinding offers. They may extend more later, but they try to get really, really, really darn close in this moment. And so right now, every firm at the beginning of May sat down and they know exactly how many people they're hiring this year. The later you are, the more doors are closed to you. So early hiring is essential. And for all of you that are in career services, this is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing right now for specialty master's groups, because if they're in a one-year specialty master's and you start with them in June, they are already behind the curve for roles for consulting firms unless they hire directly at your school. So acknowledging that you might need to do some pre-application or pre-matriculation work with some of those students for these type of roles. That's something that we're really helping and supporting a number of our partner schools with right now. We're doing pre-matriculation sessions all month. The month of May is just full of them. We have one this afternoon with the different organizations that are participating in what is the complete chaos of this now summer hiring period. But let me just run down kind of the schedule of what you'll need to do for the connection. Because when you walk into a firm, you cannot ask, when do I connect with you and what do I do next? You have to walk in and say, this is my timeline. This is my plan. I'm going to apply on this day. This is the application that I'm planning to put in. Do you have any feedback for me? Because firms respond and representatives from firms respond really, really well when you have a point of view and are checking it with them. So right at the very beginning is research the consulting industry. If you haven't already done that, we have a ton of resources and we're really happy to send some of those to you. Eden and Caleb are popping some of those into the chat on just like, what is the consulting industry? Who are the firms? What is our consulting firm database? The second is networking. So we're going to talk for the second half of this presentation about how you actually meet with and connect with these firms, identifying the target firms and application dates. So we have an application deadline page, free, open to the public on our site. Very, very highly recommend that you bookmark that page and check back with it about once a week. We also, on our email list and on our social channels, publish when the firms release their application dates. Some of them are rolling, all of them, the earliest application date is the one that you should apply for. Like international students, basically by zero exceptions, the earliest application date is the one that you should apply for. Then preparing your resume and cover letter. Many of you have thought of your experience in a very single dimension. And we'll talk in just a few minutes about some of the things that we look for on a great resume and cover letter. But our international students are often at a disadvantage without completely reworking a resume and a cover letter for the US market. We recommend that you use for consulting a US focused resume, even if you are applying in Europe, in EMEA, anywhere in Asia, like all over the place. It's really, really effective if you make sure that you use a US focused context. The US is the largest consulting market in the world by a mile, and every other office in the world acknowledges US style of resumes and cover letters. Then preparing for case interviews really needs to begin early, because if you do get these opportunities, the most important thing is that you're able to close them. We usually find around 12 weeks is the optimal time to prepare for case interviews. So what we're going to talk through now is just the final pieces of this. If a firm has information sessions, they will often have had them or be having them between now and late June. Your time to apply will ideally be around the first application deadline, which for most of you will be before the end of June. The interviews will happen between mid-June and mid-August, and then offers will begin to be extended by mid-July. So if you're an international student and you decide to wait on this and you're graduating next year, you will have to apply as an experienced hire for just-in-time hiring, just so that you know. So there really isn't waiting, and there really isn't kind of a languishing in this process. The firms are competing for, in their mind, the top talent in the world, and they can't wait. So neither can you.
We'll be right back after this quick break.
Hey, you. Yeah, you listening. Do you like personal finance or real estate? Are you itching to build wealth and create a better life for yourself or your family? Then you need to come check out the Life, Money, and More podcast with real estate agent, YouTuber, and actor Sage Weiss. This isn't your average finance show. We dive deep and do not sugarcoat topics around money and life. The Life, Money, and More podcast releases 2 episodes a week just for you, because we're all about helping you win in this crazy world we live in. Come join the thousands of listeners on the Life, Money, and More podcast.
And the last step of the 5 steps is how you connect with the firm. So I'm going to walk you through here our overarching process for how you think about this as an international student. And then we're going to go in to some of those like common problem FAQs and application tips for internationals. So just really quickly, how you connect with the firms. First of all, we recommend that you research the person's name, a person who is client facing. So one of the common mistakes that we see international students make is that they go for people who are in human resources, recruiters in consulting firms. And recruiters have negative power that is no better demonstrated than how they use it on their international students. So you say, I went and found the recruiter for McKinsey Chicago and I wrote them an email. That is an immediate ding on you, because that recruiter will, if the email that they get is, hey, I'm an international student, do you sponsor? Trash can. Not just for the email, but for the entire application. If you write to somebody who is on the front lines, maybe even an international student that you can see by their background, who is currently working at the firm, and you sell them on how remarkable you are, and they refer you in to an interview, you just got an interview, whereas going through HR would have closed the door to you. So consulting firms use their human resources function, their recruiters, et cetera, as administrators that keep people out of the process. Whereas most firms do exactly the opposite. The job of HR is to widen the funnel. In consulting, it is to narrow the funnel. So they may give you information, but they will give you no help. And it definitely is to your advantage to work around them by finding people on LinkedIn that are client facing. Step number 2 is to send not a LinkedIn message, but actually an email to someone with 3 brief bullet points and a request for a 15-minute meeting. And trust me, we have seen some of the worst emails you've ever written. And we see them all the time, and we fix them for you because we want the firm to hear from you. We don't fix them with fake information. We fix them with your story retold in a way that the firms can hear them and want to jump on the phone with you. And we have a remarkable success rate. It's over 80% of those emails that you send that people jump on a call with you. So why not take advantage of actually sending a great email? We recommend that it goes by email because email is naturally integrated with someone's calendaring function. It has a better unread message function. And often people don't spend a ton of time on LinkedIn unless they're looking for a new job. So it helps get you in the inbox of the right people as well. The third piece is to follow up, and it's really appropriate to follow up once by email, once you've emailed somebody and said, hey, do you mind if we have a call, a request for a 15-minute meeting? And then a second time by LinkedIn. Just curious if you received my email, I would love to talk. Is this Friday from 2 to 4 a good time for you, or would you like another time? 2 follow-ups, once by email, once by LinkedIn, and then it's done. That person is not a viable candidate for you to talk to, and it's time for you to move on to other folks. We have a full networking course that talks about even more detail in this. I'm just trying to give you some of the issues that we often see with our international students and how to overcome them. The focus here is on 3 offices, but it's really important and valuable to include all 3 unless you have a clear winner, right? So what I mean by that is that it's important for you to tell somebody, I would love to come to New York, but I'm also open to New Jersey and Dallas. Meet with somebody in each one of the offices. If somebody wants you to really, really be dedicated in coming through the process, through the Houston office, then go to Houston, y'all. Like, make sure that you are following the doors that are the most open to you, or you have the biggest advocates. And then in general, if you are applying for roles and you're an experienced hire, the more senior person is better. If you're applying as an undergrad or a grad student, the more junior people are better because they're actually doing the filtering for the applications at your organization. For international students, senior is awesome. It really is, because the more senior people are the most likely to see something in you and include you in the process. But senior people in consulting firms cannot often answer the do you sponsor question. They can advocate for you, they can get you in the door, but they don't have the answer to that. And so our general recommendation is for international students to target slightly more senior people. And the exception is if you are doing an on-campus hiring process, you should still talk to at least one more junior person who will likely be within 2 years of starting the role that you began. They will be on the committee that will select the interviewees, and that group is really valuable and powerful to include. So those are the 5 rules for internationals, and I think we covered a lot of information there. What I wanted to do now is, before I walk into application tips for internationals, have Caleb come through and just share a little bit about a few successes that we've had applying some of these for our international candidates inside the community. So Caleb, over to you.
Awesome. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Shane. Yes, as I mentioned, 1 in 3 of our community members and current black belts are from either targeting from international in, or they have an international background. And so what's really cool is in our process, when you come in as a black belt, we have an onboarding strategy call where I'll sit down with you. We'll look at what are your goals, what's your background, look at your resume, and really talk through where are you targeting, why. Who do you need to be talking to at those specific firms? What is that application deadline you're working against? And then who should we be networking into? And so probably a slide. Do you want to pull back up the slide you just had, Jenny Ray? That would be helpful.
This one here.
Yeah, that's great. I think a big part of a big question folks often have coming in is, who should I be targeting, and how do I network in there to effectively have an interview, which is a really key stage right now. So part of this is we really look at, as January said, we have this concentric circles of which firm, which geography, where's in alignment with where you're at, and then in that process, then how do we find the right people via LinkedIn, and then utilizing our framework and our system. We have a whole 1-hour masterclass all about that networking email. So that email is highly effective. As January mentioned, we have one black belt individual who's used it to get an 80% response rate from boutique consulting firms, one of which actually was a manager. I just talked to him a couple weeks ago using our email. So it's a really effective strategy, but you need to do it effectively, and there's small nuances of that really make it work. So part of it is this more granular custom support to help you in that process. I just got off an onboarding call this morning from a gentleman who is at Booth in Chicago, going through the MBA program, and I'm pairing him up with one of our coaches, Coach Miley, who was Chicago Booth MBA, and she was Bain, New York. So really, it's also like, how can I also help you sync up with a coach that's actually worked in MBB and has often been the recruiter in that firm, or has helped with that onboarding process to help look at the nuance of how do we actually target Bain, New York, or how do we actually leverage your Chicago Booth background with someone who has that same background and has actually recruited from that standpoint. So those are just a couple of examples of how we actually take all this and we make it personal to where you're at right now. Even 2 days ago, I had a call with a gentleman who's from Kuwait. And we started talking, hey, how do we leverage your background and look at who on LinkedIn can you connect with? Where's their common affinity? And how do we basically find the right entry points into these different firms as an experienced hire? So whether it's an MBA or coming as an experienced hire, we really look at how do we make sure that you can apply this specifically. And I would also just echo, I have noticed a theme, like Jerry's mentioned, where oftentimes there's this perceived wall of sponsorship. There's this mindset of, oh my gosh, can I get through this wall of will they sponsor me or not? And I have noticed that there's this almost negative energy or expectation around that, versus other clients that I've seen that are often US based don't have that. They do come in assertive. So I would just echo, part of this too is also, what's your story? How do you own your story? How do you own your skill set? And how is that transferable to the firm you want to move into in that specific position? And so part of this is also, how do we help you not look at maybe expecting a no, but how do we take all the experience you have and anticipate a yes, and the way that you position your context, your experience, and the roles you position into, how do we actually be that a benefit coming from your international experience? And so it's a whole process, but we basically take all this, we make it practical inside the program with myself, our trainings, and our incredible range of coaches who have both been in the US, and we have some folks who have been engagement managers in Dubai and Paris and all over the world. So it's a group that gets it where you're at today.
I think our main job, y'all, is to make sure you get it done. But some people think that what that means is that you take only a long-term view. We're not saying that. Like, we don't want you to waste time on things that are going to waste your time in the short term. But there is a long-term view of this, which says, if I talk to a firm and have a great connection with a person and they don't end up sponsoring me, that's still okay. Like, I still had a great connection with that person, and I never know where that door is going to lead me. And so the more of those that I have, that I'm open to being a yes or a no in the gateway at the end, the better I'm getting at telling telling my story, the more excited I'm getting about potential opportunities, the more I recognize that people are getting on the phone with me in the first place. And it's a snowball effect that really makes a huge difference for our internationals. We do not want y'all, but I'm an American. I like to have you feel welcome here. I want you to know how celebrated you are, but we need you to understand what you're dealing with. And so that's really, the arena, the rules, I think are really helpful insight for you to know. So now I just want to walk through some application tips for internationals, and then we're going to walk through the resources. And at the end, by the way, Eden, I just want to say thank you. Eden is just crushing the chat, and so y'all are asking great questions. Keep asking them in the chat because there's a lot of material still to cover here. And in case we don't get to a million questions, I would love for you still to get your questions answered. So networking tips: reach out to the client-facing staff at the level you're applying for. Okay, so a lot of people apply or talk to people and they make one of two errors. First, they're like, oh, I'm international, I should probably go to somebody more junior because they're cool, they're chill, they're easy to get a hold of. Don't ever do that. No one underneath the position that you're applying for can help you at all. That's an absolute zero. Don't waste your time on that. Client-facing staff, as I mentioned earlier, is essential. It cannot be someone who is in a recruiter position. Now, many people help with recruiting. Many professional staff members help with recruiting. But if they don't on their LinkedIn have mention of clients that they've worked with and problems that they've solved for external clients, they are not the people that you want to be talking to. Number two, when you send an email, do not attach a resume. It is the responsibility of your email to do 100% of getting somebody on a call with you. If your email doesn't do that, your email is not good enough. And so a lot of you write a complete novel and then are like, please refer to the resume. First of all, your resume might be even crappy as well, but don't attach a resume. Your job of the email is to get somebody to be like, absolutely, I would spend 15 minutes with this person. So it puts the burden on the email that is appropriate. It also keeps you out of spam filters. So a lot of times if you're sending an email with an attachment as your first email, you're going to get popped into a spam filter. Number three, include a specific date and time range in your cold outreach email. Like I got a message last night. A friend of mine was like, hey, somebody's thinking about moving to your city. Can you help them? I was like, absolutely. Message I got was, do you have time to talk to me? And my immediate answer to that is absolutely not. Like, y'all, I run multiple businesses. I have a family. Like I've got things going on. So do I have time? No. If he had been like, do you have time on Thursday between this and this time? I might have been like, look, let me look at my calendar. So giving busy people specific times or time windows is absolutely essential. And in the consulting world, end of the week time zones are more likely to get a yes than early in the week time zones. Thursdays or Fridays are higher target options. Number four, common mistake that we see. Somebody does all of what we've told them. They like get on LinkedIn, somebody actually gives you a call and you're like, this is a miracle. And then they get on the call and they chat and they chat and they chat. And at the end, they're like, awesome, thank you so much. Big missed opportunity. When I get on the phone with somebody, I do not want a relationship with you. I got on the phone with you. I want to filter you. I want to say yes or no. I want to put you into one of two categories. And so if you, at the end of that call, do not ask me for a referral. Hey, I'm planning to apply. Would you mind referring me when the time comes? Or the way that I really love to say it is, after our conversation today, would you feel comfortable referring me for an interview? Yes or no. You get great feedback if they say no, because you're going to get told why their answer is no. You also get a referral if they say yes. And it doesn't have to be, can you refer me tomorrow? It's just like when the time comes. So asking for a referral in your first call is mandatory. We spend a lot of time when people come into the community cleaning up the nonsense that they created by opening doors that they had no idea how to finish off the process with. And then number five, inform your contact when you have applied. Okay. Inform your contact when you have applied. So making sure that you're not just assuming that they're following up on your life, but that you actually let them know, hey, I applied. If you would activate that referral, I'd be super grateful. And that's a really powerful piece of the process. Resume tips. Man, we love to retell resumes. And once a month, we do a resume makeover here live on this open channel. And I think it's one of my most fun things to do. We walk through in those how to format a resume, how to structure a resume, and how to tell the content of your resume. But let me just highlight some of the international things that come up a lot that I put onto this slide. So number one, it is essential that you put your transferable skills by name and context. So not just like, I can do these things. things, but I used Python to solve a $2 million cost problem for this business. So application of your technical skills and then very specific research, analysis, and leadership skills need to be demonstrated. You must have at least one commercial experience, and we don't separate them. If it was engineering experience or if it was research experience in a PhD, it's commercial experiences. We think about work experiences as separate to unpaid, ungraded leadership experiences. If you didn't get paid for them, like on Strategy Sprint, a lot of people for Strategy Sprint are going to put their commercial experience in the US on their resume. Doesn't matter at all if you got paid. These firms are actually leading pay transparency. They don't care what your prior amount of money is that you made. They're going to tell you, congratulations, this is your role and this is how much you're going to make. So it's an awesome place to demonstrate your commercial experiences, make sure that those are clear. We also need to see that you did something outside the classroom, 1 to 2 leadership roles. We would love to see you be the president of something or have started a startup or a nonprofit. We don't care whether you are the boss of it. We care whether you held a material influence inside that role or organization. We love to see academic awards. Many of you undersell yourself. If you got a scholarship, tell us how much it was. Tell us how competitive it was. We love to see top scores. If you got great scores on your GMAT or your SAT, like tell us. The firms are like, well, great. Now we know that you're capable of playing with the big boys and girls. And then Excel. So Excel specifically is something that we would love to see you mention because 9 out of 11 hours of your day is going to be in some kind of analytical program and likely Excel. And so demonstrating that you like it, that you've done it before is a great tip. And then finally, interview tips. So when you're practicing for the case, once you've gotten the opportunities, once your resume is amazing, once you are in the door and moving through the process, it's really important that y'all understand that there is a process to case mastery. Everyone on our case team can tell you about a case that we failed. Like mine happened to be my first out loud case. It was not just a failure. It was like such a bomb that it was almost an atomic bomb. It was so bad. And the person told me she had never seen a case as bad as that one. And so we have all started somewhere, but there is a process to case mastery. And I'm just going to walk you through our high level process right now so that you understand what you need to start doing today. Starting with market sizing questions, 2 per day will help break the ice, get you talking out loud, and build the analytical framework that you need for later parts of the case. Reading, watching, and doing along 5 cases. We have free ones available on our podcast and on our YouTube channel. These are amazing places for you to access those. If you are at a partner school that has access to our paid resources, in our case interview bootcamp, we have expert videos. So that's an expert versus an expert. And you actually can also see how they're writing and walking through a process. But reading, watching, and doing along 5 cases is a great way also for you to DIY. Then it's really important that early, not late, you do a diagnostic interview with an expert. They'll tell you how close you are to being ready when you're raw. And that gives you a sense of like, awesome, I don't have to work on 2 out of 3 things, or wow, I have a ton of work to do. But level setting really early on with somebody who has either successfully gotten an offer or an expert coach. You can work with one at Management Consulted and you can do a single hour with them if you want to. But a diagnostic interview is really essential. And then the most common misstep that we see, other than just like people reading and thinking that makes them ready for the interview, it's laughable. Honestly, it's adorable, but it's laughable, is when you focus on diversity of firms and industries, which don't matter at all. What matters is that you see a diverse set of business problems applied. And so doing 10 cases, focusing on the 10 different business problems, and we break all of these out inside our case library, that is an absolutely essential part of the case mastery process. After that baseline, you basically can prepare for the interview by doing drills. If you're bad at math, you do math drills. If you're bad at structure, you do structure drills. The majority of your case prep will actually be deep and not wide. And this is one of the reasons why at Management Consulted, we're so successful at prepping people for cases, because we don't use a standard do case, think about case, do case, think about case process. We are like, do case, pull it apart, only do that piece of the case, get it right, then move on. So our process is different, and that's why our results are different as well. Let me just mention a few more quick slides. So if you are a prospective student, if you're not sure where you're going, you can ask about visa support and international placement from your school. Selecting a supportive school is a very important part of this process. If you're at a school that crushes this, write Eden right now, because we want you to come onto our podcast and tell other schools how to do this. This is something that is an absolutely essential part of every great school right now, is how supportive you are of international students. And so if you are a prospective student, ask about this. Do not just assume that a great academic program equals amazing support for visa processes. Second, network in country first. Right? So in country first, connect with folks at your target firms before you start school. So having the baseline of this is what McKinsey thinks in Bangalore can help you enter the conversation at an advantage when you're moving into a US context. Selecting an in-demand major or degree, highly analytical applied majors like masters in analytics, economics, business administration, give you the clear engineering, right? Anything that is highly analytical gives you definitely the best shot. And then finally, getting involved on campus. If you're a prospective student, don't plan to come and study all the time. You need to do something outside the classroom. Get involved in a case competition. Start doing a leadership program where you do a free consulting project for someone. These are the stories that will get you hired. And if you don't recognize it now, you'll figure it out later, but it'll be too late. So get involved on campus. If you are in an experienced hired category, leverage your specific industry expertise and relationships. Like I sat down with somebody for coffee in Chicago and I found them an amazing role that was a perfect fit for them at a firm that they never would have thought of, because it was leveraging their specific industry insight and relationships. This is what Caleb does like all day, every day. He's just like, you want a job? Here, this is where you need to go apply, right? This is a part of the concierge process that is really helpful. But these are the ways that you can do it yourself: healthcare, tech, supply chain, et cetera, making sure that you match your experience with the firm and the roles that you apply for. And then finally, just if none of this sounds fun to you, you don't want to do it, you feel like it's impossible, here are a few creative pathways, right? Work for a global firm in your home country for a year and then apply for a transfer. Do it. If they say no to the transfer, now you have that global firm on your resume. Apply for another opportunity that will get you to where you want to go. Second, work with a non-consulting brand name firm in the US. We have, as we're just going to share in a second, an H-1B database. Go find one that sponsors you, that's open to sponsoring you, and then lateral into another consulting field. So using that kind of an early concentric circle diagram, move through those steps. And then finally, develop specialized skills. Tech firms are absolutely more likely to sponsor. You don't want to do a tech job? That's fine, but do it for a short amount of time. Do it for a year or get a job and then continue, before accepting that job, continue to apply for other roles, because having one, then in every interview you can say, yeah, I've got a job at Amazon, but I'm looking for something a little different. Yeah, I've got a job at, BP, but I'm still looking for something that's a little bit more globally focused. Can you help me walk through that process? Before we end today, I just want to provide you with our tools for success. So knowing the firms that offer H-1B sponsorship is nearly impossible, because they literally change their mind every second day, honestly. And they don't keep it up to date, and they're never sure based on their entire hiring landscape whether they are or not sponsoring. But what you can do is identify firms that in the last 12 to 24 months have sponsored somebody for an H-1B visa. Always a great correlated relationship between those firms and their likelihood to sponsor you. We have a searchable directory of over 1,000 consulting firms that have offered H-1B sponsorship. And some of you were asking earlier, like, how do you find the person's name on email? You can actually click on this firm sponsors. If they have a entry in our firm database, then you can go there and you can see what the email style is, what their offices are. You can read a firm profile about the firm. So we have, I think, a rich and underused resource in our H-1B sponsorship database for consulting firms that's also specifically tied to contacting those firms themselves. And you'll find that tech-focused firms that both are tech consulting firms and tech firms themselves, are more likely to sponsor. And that's great. Work for them. Once you've worked for them, you have a lot of opportunities as well. So the H-1B database, this tiny URL, will take you right there. So as we're closing, gosh, I left 2 minutes, Eden, for questions. So I'll let you surface one or two quick ones. We just wanted to make sure that y'all know that if you want to do everything with us for free, we never mind. We love doing it for you. We're honored to be a part of your journey, and we love to hear your success stories if you never spend $1 with us. But if you want additional support or help, joining one of our 3 main programs, the DIY All Access Pass, which universities can provide subscriptions to for your students at a very, very, very discounted rate. It's an unlimited subscription. It's not a per seat subscription, so it's really affordable for universities. And then Black Belt and Super Prep are 2 kind of concierge coaching programs that we'd also love to have you join.
This episode on navigating U.S. recruiting for internationals. If you did, please leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform of choice. We'll catch you again on another episode soon.